Hello, everybody, and good evening. Welcome to our June 18th, 2020 regular scheduled meeting. This is a virtual board meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Mary Lane is here. Roxanne McDonald. Present. Michael Mead.
Present.
Adil Moseb.
Here.
Mary Petchlikoff.
Here.
James Thorpe.
Here.
President Barry.
Here, thank you. Next item, please.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Dr. Adnan Mogni, principal of McDonald Elementary School, will introduce students who will lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Maleko. We are from McDonald Elementary School. I am Mrs. Hanson.
I am Mrs. Hamoud.
I'm Jude, and I'm Samad.
And we are here to say the Pledge of Allegiance, so please put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and have a great meeting.
Well done. Next item, please.
Superintendent's update. A moment of silence.
So good evening, everyone. As we've done the last couple of months, I'd like to
It's all yours, Glenn.
Okay. Good evening. Yeah, you're fine. Good evening, everyone, President Barry, trustees, members of the public. So we've done this every month, given the current COVID-19 crisis. We've had individuals who have passed away as a result of the virus. One is, and it happened several weeks ago, but it was before the last board meeting, Senator Morris Hood. So I want to specifically mention him. And I would just like to take a moment of silence for all those, not only locally, but across the country and internationally, for that matter, who have lost their life as a result of COVID-19 or lost a family member. A moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Agenda items. A, retirements.
So we have retirements that are coming in this time of year. You will likely see them increase, usually in June, although this year, because of the COVID-19 situation, we don't know how that will necessarily impact exactly. But we do want to congratulate all those who are retiring and thank them for their years of service. So we have Robin Crawford with 21 years of service, April Cronin with 31 years of service, Margaret Dudek with over 19 years of service, Tracy Lahudi, 25 years of service, Renee Schuett, 32 years of service, Suzanne Wancha, 22 years of service, Deborah Washington, 32 years of service, Joanne Zekar, over 42 years of service. Again, thank you to our retirees and congratulations. Let's give them a round of applause virtually. So we,
Go ahead, Dr. Maleko.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, so curriculum, we have that on the agenda right now for an action item. And so I've asked Dr. Chopel to come in, Executive Director, Miss Eunice, Lori Principal, and Miss Maynard to come and speak to the curriculum. And this is an action item. We've been deliberating on it. It's gone through all of the process through our curriculum council. In a normal year, I think we would not even be maybe having these extra steps per se of extra verification of the need, but because of the COVID situation, we've gone through additional process. One of the things I did is after it went through to the curriculum council, came to executive cabinet, I had additional meetings with unions, with our curriculum team, with the general administrators, all administrators. And I was getting a very strong opinion that we really need to move forward with this curriculum. I was a little hesitant, being honest at first, but I wanted to, given the situation. But as the administrators and principals and even the ADSA president, Mr. Dave Higgins, talked about the fact that this is going to be coming out of the CARES, some of the curriculum will come out of the CARES Act, which is the one-time money we're going to receive, which Mr. Wall will always say it's an appropriate finance. Secondly, because of the unknown, especially with the language arts curriculum, but with both, there's a huge online component that would come with the curriculum that's being adopted. And so it's quite fitting that we need to move forward with some resources, knowing that we don't know what's going to happen exactly in the fall, and I'm going to be commenting on that later. And so this has gone through an extra review process. It was also talked about last week at the Finance Committee meeting, and Dr. Chokol came forward. And so then I've actually offered a couple of individuals who have helped with Ms. Rima Yunus and Ms. Angela Maynor, who have helped with piloting some of the curriculum and have been intensively involved. So again, we went through this extra deliberation given the current situation, and that's kind of where we're at with this. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chokol.
Before you do that, just a note, President Barry, trustees, and Dr. Maleko, there will be a public comment on this item further down. It's by Ms. Jane Mazza of the Dearborn Federation of Teachers. So she wants to make a comment, which I will read later.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, board trustees, President Barry, and Superintendent Maleko. The recommendations for the two curriculum resources, elementary language arts and high school math, were the result of 2 years of work on the part of the teachers and the administrators who form the membership of these two individual committees. So after a long process of material selection, a year-long pilot, which just finished this spring, the piloting teachers made a recommendation to the elementary language arts for the elementary resource, the high school math committee for the high school math resource. And both of those committees, which are composed of teachers and administrators, approved those recommendations. Those recommendations went to the principals, the high school principals and the elementary principals, and those two groups respectively approved the elementary from the elementary principals, the high school principals. The recommendation then went to instructional cabinet, and as Dr. Maleko indicated, the recommendation did go to the executive cabinet. Both of these resources offer extensive digital resources, and in light of the recent school closing and the need for remote instruction, the teachers who were piloting programs with digital resources truly had an extra advantage. So knowing that the users are classroom teachers and they are led and supported by their administrators, our principal of Laurie Elementary Middle School, Mrs. Rima Yunus, is here to speak from the perspective of leading a K-8 building. So I'm going to ask Rima to unmute and say a few words.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I know that this has been debatable in that we don't want to implement something new at this time because of the virtual situation that we're in. But having gone through this firsthand with my teachers, my students, and my parents, I think that if anything, it's really a critical time, and even more so should be implemented because of the digital component and the fact that the ambiguity that exists between different teachers and what they're doing and expecting of students. Should we fall into the situation in the future moving forward, that this would really create an equal playing ground for everybody, for the teachers, for the students, for the parents. And, because right now I did get a lot of emails comparing what one teacher is doing compared to that of the other. So it really puts us in a compromising situation when you're trying to eliminate, different components of maybe teachers are expecting more, one teacher is expecting less, some parents want more. So I think that this is really a great option, and it was already a recommendation that we were trying to proceed forward with this. So I think the timing is really, really critical for us right now. And if you all recall, when the accreditation came in, this was one of the suggestions that they set forth, was that we move forward to a common ground platform with our language arts in our language arts department. So, I've really, I've had the experience to pilot this in my building, and I've really been working with it quite a bit. And I'm very excited to move forward with it. And so are my teachers. So any new teachers coming in, there's no ambiguity of what to do or what not to do. It's really laid out for them. It's a cross-curricular program. It's highly engaging. Like I said, the virtual component it's amazing. They have a writing component embedded into it as well. I could go on and on. So if you have any questions for me, you could tell I'm a great advocate.
Thank you, Mrs.
Petrikov,
Eunice.
good question.
Yeah, I've got a question and I don't know if Ms. Eunice or Dr. Choko will be able to answer this one, but since this has been looked at for the past 2 years, this was pre-COVID environment. What was the motive? I think Rima already kind of answered it from what was determined from the accreditation about having a more consistent application for our students across all of our schools. But was that the motivation to start looking at these particular programs, and it just happened to, luckily enough, to have this virtual component to it that fits in now in our new reality of online teaching?
Well, actually, the need for a resource common across elementary for language arts has existed for almost 20 years. There has not been a common instructional resource for our elementary community in that period of time. There are many different resources that are used, but the point at which another recommendation would have made fell at the time there was a budget crisis between 2008, 2009. And so there was no core resource or curriculum being looked at that time. And once our budget got to a more stable condition, the curriculum committees began the search for the best resource for not only the students, but certainly the use of teachers, as well as resources for readers at home and things of that sort. So Rima, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but I know that you have been around, in this situation for quite some time.
Like I said, just really creating that equal playing ground for all teachers. I know that I've really researched a lot about this, and I've been able to sit into the classrooms and observe what's happening. Like I said, the writing is embedded into every lesson. There's a writer's workshop also as a part of the curriculum. It offers a year-long spelling curriculum that is also tied into each lesson. The electronic component of it is very engaging. There's games available to help the students with the phonics skills and the word work. There's test-based questions that are very similar to that of the M-STEP verbiage that we see, which is higher level DOK, and we're trying to move all staff forward with that to really implement that in the classrooms. Teachers have a hard time with the questions that they ask impetuously are more lower level 1 and 2. So we're really trying to move forward with the higher level questions, and the questions are really higher level in that. The benchmark has an ELL and special ed edition, and that follows the same as a classroom. It's like a classroom, but offers an alternative resource with more visuals and less text per page. So the kids could engage with it, and with less, less being more. There's objectives for every single lesson every week. All the teachers and student materials are available online, so you find it there. It really is a friendly, it's a friendly framework. And like I said, it just really puts everybody, it holds everybody accountable for the same thing. There's no more ambiguity of, well, this teacher produced better results because she's teaching things in a different way, or her assessment is a little bit different. It just really creates that uniform that we're looking for in teaching language arts.
But it doesn't eliminate the teacher's ability to be creative in her own classroom setting.
Absolutely not. I think the
Okay.
teacher, the teacher overall, she's on a stage, and it's her stage, it's her classroom, it's the way that she performs, the way that she engages with students, and entertaining the class in and of itself, the way you present the lesson, that in and of itself is engaging, and it allows for creativity and flexibility. So, but what we have to learn is what we have to learn. The essentials are there, and there's no deviating away from that. And I think this is what's great about this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Trustee
think the vision,
McDonald,
sorry, go ahead.
Trustee McDonald had a question.
Yeah, Ms. Eunice kind of touched on it, but if you could elaborate a little bit, I understand and appreciate the need right now for all the online applications, but when we do return to normality, what can you elaborate on what we could use all the online applications, how they can be used in the classroom? You talked about games and other things, but just elaborate a little bit on that ability.
Well, I think too, like when they go home, it's the same situation when we require that they go home and practice the skills that we're trying to get them to understand. This just lends itself. It's a segue for home. And again, it's no longer you bringing home different material. And I hear it every day as an administrator. When certain students have teacher A as opposed to teacher B, why did she get a lesson on similes? Why didn't my child learn a lesson on similes? There's no moving away from that. It just really allows teachers to speak the same language. The formative assessment is there. They know exactly where they want kids to end up during the PLCs now. They're really just speaking the same language, and they have the same objective and goals. So this is what it's doing. This is what it will be doing, and the kids will then be able to go home and practice these skills together in the same exact fashion.
Good. Trustee
Can they
Wayne,
also, sorry, go ahead.
I would just like to chime in with an example, literally an example of teaching in the same language. I taught abroad at high school English, and there were other teachers. One was from England, and then I developed my own curriculum. He developed something completely different. One was American English, the other was British English, and it was almost literally a different language. The big advantage, and I know that that many teachers are doing this in charter schools. We have a huge advantage in the public system, especially with a district as large as we are. We're able to get the best curriculum that integrates with tests, and as Principal Eunice just mentioned, it's looking toward where we're going to go on what we want students to learn and to be able to test to. So it's a real advantage. It's a massive amount of work for an individual teacher to have to develop curriculum. And not everybody has all of those skills that they can do that. So to not have a curriculum, you're really leaving every teacher to ad lib in their classroom. So I think it is an advantage.
And if I could piggyback off of that, it also spirals up into the next grade level. And being a K through 8 building, I really find that so advantageous in that, teachers really we have right now during these meetings, we have these vertical articulation meetings whereby my 5th grade will meet with my 4th grade, my 6th grade will meet with my 5th to try to figure out the gaps that exist there. And this program kind of does it for them, which, we've never had anything like that. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. I cannot explain how eager I am for this because being a language arts person myself, and like Dr. Chokol explained, this has been something that we have been in need of for such a long time. So I'm very, very excited. And what's great about this too is, like you asked, Mrs. Petchikoff, it really does allow for implementation of other things. There's just the other programs didn't allow for that flexibility, whereby this did. It really allowed for that flexibility. You could integrate different guided reading books. There's just so much that you can do. And that was my number one concern and question too, is allowing teachers that freedom to do so. And this program does, but hold them accountable for specific things that must be taught.
Well, and I will say that because I was first on the board in 2008 and we had 5 things going on in one end of town and 4 different programs being tested in another. And one of the complaints was over the years as we kept on trying out a variety of programs was a lot of teachers felt that they were being cornered into a way to teach that didn't allow for them to really be the teacher in the classroom. But I also know that we have a lot of student movement across district. And when you have something completely different going on in one building and the students and their family moves to a different building, they're lost because they have something, they're on a different page.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. Absolutely. And that's, you hit it. That is just so critical.
Trustee McDonald, do you have a follow-up question?
No, it was answered. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll go to Trustee Thorpe. You had a question?
Yes, I think Mrs. Eunice alluded to it already. What grade level does this go through? Does it go through 5th or does it go through 8th?
This is up to 5th. And we are working on piloting a program for middle school currently now for language arts because it is in K through 8th.
Thank you.
Any other
Did we
questions?
want to hear from the math teacher too?
Trustee Moser, you had a question?
Yes, my question was regarding parent participation. What was the feedback from the parents regarding this program? Did they feel it was different than the students, or did you have a parent who had a child that was piloting and another child that was not in the program that could give you that feedback?
Well, we piloted it in 2 different grade levels. So I never had any, and my parents are very verbose. So if there was anything concerning or that they were concerned about, I would definitely have heard of it. But I'm going to be honest with you, I can't really comment much to that because I didn't hear any negativity from the parents at all about this. So we piloted it in our first grade. That was the grade that we decided to pilot in our building. And parents were very excited. They would come in. We have a day where parents actually come in during a parent meeting and they could walk into the classrooms and observe what's happening, and they take notes and they could ask questions based on those observations. And everything they had to say was just wonderful. They loved the visit. They really appreciated it. They learned a lot. They saw how this program was implemented. So it was only positive feedback, but I didn't delve deeply into specifically asking them how they felt about the benchmark.
As part of the piloting process, for all of the resources, according to the district piloting procedures, we do have the opportunity for what we call a materials preview time for both the Dearborn staff, teachers and administrators, and also for the parents. So the materials preview was attended by about 160 elementary teachers, and there was a survey that teachers filled out after the end of their session. Not all the teachers filled out the survey, but about 75 to 80% of the survey responses were extremely favorable. There were a couple of concerns and questions about why it is we're considering a resource at this particular time. And I think that those questions were addressed by Superintendent Maleko early on. The idea that the COVID-19 budget can pay for a good portion of these since they are digital resources. The other part of the materials preview was an opportunity for parents to preview. And we heard nothing but positive comments about their ability to access every part of the curriculum online, to look at all of the student readers, to look at all of the lessons that were available. And as Mrs. Eunice said, the games that were available and the work that students could do at home were all there for them to look at. So this is quite a benefit, I think, from a home perspective, as well as certainly our teachers' ability to spend time teaching and not on curriculum development, as Trustee Lane pointed out. So I think we wanted to move over to the math program if there are no further questions. And our department chair, an expert math teacher from Etzel Ford High School, who also led the initiative to pilot the programs that were part of the high school math recommendation, Angela Maynor. I'm going to turn that over to her and ask her to speak to the secondary, the high school math. Angie?
Thank you. Good evening, President Berry, Board Trustees, and Dr. Malenko. Thank you for having me. As Dr. Chokol said, I was part of the whole vetting 2-year process, and I was fortunate enough to pilot the 2 choices that we narrowed it down to. We piloted one in the fall and then Envision AGA in the spring, and AGA actually was overwhelmingly chosen by the committee. And I'm pretty sure it's because of the resources that are available. So I just wanted to give you a list of the resources that we have. There's a physical book, there's an online PDF version of the book, and then there's an online interactive textbook. There's a consumable workbook that can be used as notes and or practice pages if we were going to use it in the classroom if we go back and when we go back. There's videos that are already created that can be linked to specific topics or examples. There's an online practice that includes both help buttons and hints for the students. This is pretty powerful. There's an adaptive practice that if it's assigned to the students, it takes them back to possible problems like that they're having in the previous material, but it can also challenge students to go further. So it works both ways and it adapts to each student. So it's pretty powerful. Gives them videos and gives them different kinds of problems. There's a readiness assessment before every topic that can help teachers determine previous skills that the class could be struggling with. Each topic also has a quick formative check at the end that can help teachers determine if students are ready to move on. There's online quizzes and tests that are pre-made, or the teachers can build them. So there's a question bank that they can choose from. There's printable versions of the test quizzes and practices as well. There's mixed reviews that often throughout the book that spiral back to make sure that students' learning is both continuous and permanent. And then also there's what they call 3-act math lessons that help students do a conceptualization of the entire big picture of what the unit is looking at. And then each unit also has an optional STEM project, a STEM project that can be used to pull all the math together that's used in the real world. So in my opinion, all of these resources will both be helpful in school, or if we continue in our remote learning, or if we have some sort of hybrid version of the two. Obviously, the online resources are priceless in a remote learning atmosphere, but also having an actual physical book in students' hands is a great resource to help students and their guardians navigate through every lesson. We hear that so often, why don't they have a book? For many years, we've been teaching without a book, and we hear over and over, why don't they have a book? We need a book. So I think the physical book is going to be a huge part of it as well, whether we're at home or at school.
Great.
And that's it. Does
Are
anyone
there
have
any
any questions?
Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, when I was reading about the curriculum, it said that it had opportunities for project-based learning.
Mhm.
And I was just, and I'm assuming, was that for both or was that for the math primarily?
I know the math does. That's the STEM projects that are at the
Okay.
beginning of every unit. Yes. I
Right.
don't know about the language arts.
Jill, do you know? Oh, can't hear you.
There are multiple add-ons to the benchmark program and a lot of cross-curricular work with both science and social studies. And so the committees have looked at aligning all of the standards for science and social studies to the language arts so that students could participate in some of the projects that are part of the science as well as the social studies aligned with the language arts.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'd also like to give our teachers just a huge compliment. As Ms. Maynor discussed and as Ms. Eunice mentioned, our teachers have been creating their own lessons, spending hours and hours and weeks creating their own lessons because they did not have a curriculum resource to provide them with a roadmap. So again, it was just where we were as a district, but they have worked very hard without a sound structural support like this curriculum resource for a very long time. So my compliments to them. And I know that the recommendations of the piloting teachers, as well as all of the teachers on the elementary language arts, and the high school math teachers shows that the teachers that use the resource truly are committed to it and the benefits during this time of remote instruction. So the benefit, even for high school, of having a book in the hand and not just that online resource is something that the teachers have realized that the students really need. So thank you very much.
Trustee Petrikos has a question.
Yeah, if we move forward with these two programs, and I forget how many, was it 6 years that we were buying into them? Are we going to, at the end of each school year, survey our teachers again and find out whether whether this is really working for the majority now, not just the pilot schools that handled it, that everybody has bought into it, and as we move forward, so that we can and maybe even as Trustee Lane or no Trustee Mosip suggested, get some parent feedback after a certain period of time as well.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we can do. The digital portion of what the publishers call the online training is quite extensive, so that teachers can access these supports, virtually 24/7. And we know that, like anything else new, that it might take a little time, but the benefits in terms of having lessons right there that are pre-recorded that can be administered to students immediately is a benefit. We feel like at the end of the first year, getting teacher feedback, Trustee Petrikov, that's a great suggestion, would be, truly a benefit. As you know, that purchase price does extend out over the full 6 years, and there are no additional costs for either program. It includes all of the consumable materials, the teacher materials, and all of the software licenses.
Okay. And do we know how much the CARE program is going to, is it 50%, 70%, 20%?
We have a table down there. Mr. Wall is probably a better.
Okay, I'll wait until I can actually pull it from the agenda then, and
I want to
ask
say
that
at least
question.
75 to 80% of the program, if I'm not mistaken. But I think about 75 to 80% of the language arts, and maybe more, like 50, 60% of the high school math can be charged off to the
CARE program.
To the COVID-19 money.
Okay. Well, we'll let Mr. Wall get to that at some point.
75%, he said.
Okay, well, that's a sizable chunk of change for not being taken from the general fund for this. Okay,
Trustee
thank
Mosip
you.
has a question.
I think the question that I had in mind has been answered, so thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Dr. Choko, thank you very much. Thank you to you and your team.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yes, we'll go to the next item, please, Madam Secretary.
Non-agenda items, COVID-19 update. Again, I would note there is a comment that'll be coming in the comments section, which asks a question about this and the reopening.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Lane. President Berry, I may just decide to combine A and B. B is reopening committee because they kind of integrate together. And so we continue to respond. We have our crisis team, as everyone is aware. We've been watching, all the data in the community. We know that we're starting to open up here in Michigan, so we're monitoring it closely. We're also continue with our food distribution. We're continuing with the continuity of learning plan, which ends this week. And so I do want to say, congratulations to all of our students who are advancing grades or those which we're going to talk about later, our graduates. And I want to thank our great staff and parents, because it has been a struggle and everyone really has stepped up and worked together. And so by the end of this Thursday, we tried to make this kind of a lighter week of finishing assignments, but it is here. We're near the finish line as far as the 1920 year. But we will continue to support our students, whether that be through summer school or other ways. And as you're aware, we are planning for next year. So as I go into the reopening committee, it is connected. And so a lot of things that keep coming up and questions for me, and we had a Facebook chatting event, our first virtual chatting. I'm doing chatting events with staff and parents virtually now. We had our successful session last Thursday. And that's the big question from parents is, what is going to happen? And the reality is we really don't know. Having said that, we're planning for multiple possibilities, and that's just the truth. Our committee that I appointed, and this was prior to knowing about the governor's committee, and I know Trustee Lane and Trustee Thorpe are serving on the reopening committee for Dearborn. We have the co-chairs, Jane Mazza, Mesa Mali Bazzi, David Higgins. There are over 70 individuals from the community and from the staff that are sitting on this. And my understanding is there's even more that are going to sit through the different subcommittees. So one of the directions that I've given the committee co-chairs and the committee, and I came in the first session, is to say, look, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And the reality is because the governor and the legislature will have to decide what school will look like. We, myself as superintendent, and even as the Board of Education, we don't have the legal authority to determine the number of days and things. That's a state decision. Once the state comes down with that decision, then we as the board and the superintendent and our locals will have to decide how to implement it per the law. So even if we hear of local districts coming up with this plan or that plan, they really don't know yet. They're planning for possibilities, but it's nothing definite until the state gives us direction. And so I'm very proud that we do have our committee. We're looking at all the reports and we are ahead. Now, some states have started sooner, but they also end their school year down south in May, early May, and then they start up in early August. So they're on a little bit of a different time schedule, and we're seeing some of the plans. So we're still waiting for direction from the state. And at the same token, we're not sitting back because we are going to come up with multiple possibilities. Possibilities such as, do we think students could be back in school fully next year? Or could it be partial days where students may go some days during the week and then some days online? Or if the virus really, were to increase the number of those who were infected, would it slow down? We'd have to close again. We've talked about things like flexibility. So for example, is it possible that we could open schools for a couple of months and then all of a sudden we have some cases and we have to close an area? These are all things that are being discussed on my committee with the state, by the way. So we're discussing all these things to come up with a plan. There's also the possibility that we could be partially in school and then all of a sudden we get a vaccine and then guess what? We're able to return. And so there's a lot of things. And so we have to plan for flexibility. And I know that's not what people want to hear because they want to know. But the reality is right now, and I've heard Dr. Fauci say, the virus dictates what's going to happen. The science does. I'm sitting on that committee for Dr. Rice with Dr. Carnell in one of 3 sections. And one of the things that Dr. Rice, the state superintendent, made it clear is that this will be a medical and science decision first and an educational decision second. Of course, education is important, but right now the health of the state and the health of the country is number one. And so that's where this decision is going to start from the. So interim, we are coming up with possible plans. How is transportation going to look? How is athletics? All these questions that are out there are things that our committee is going to address. So I don't have any specific answers, other than what I can say is we are being very proactive with this. With the committee, we're gathering the input of the committee. And then once we do get direction from the state, we will be able to individualize it for the needs that Dearborn Public Schools has. I also think we're doing a service to the rest of the state because through my ability to work through the state committee, I will be also using examples and information that I'm getting from my local committee to bring it to the state committee. I've already had several meetings. And our timeline, hopefully to get recommendations to Dr. Rice, which we'll take to the governor, will be by the end of June, if not early July. So, but again, we were also told that committee could be called together throughout the summer periodically and or beyond, depending on the crisis at hand. So I did take a little bit of time to explain this, but I can tell you this is a question that continues to come up. So understand that we're being proactive, we're planning for multiple possibilities, and we're going to put the health and safety of the community as the number one, and of course, our students. And we appreciate our great staff that's involved, and I appreciate all the individuals who are involved on the state committee. There's multiple, and then of course, our Dearborn committee.
Dr. Maleko, why don't you just continue with your non-agenda items, please?
Okay, sure, I'll do that. All right, I'm going to go down to commitment to diversity. And I just have a statement that I put out last week. I put out a statement to the community. It really has been a difficult week in the United States as we continue to address the COVID-19 virus, as I just mentioned, and with the tragedy in Minneapolis and the rioting in some cities. Thankfully, thousands of people peacefully protested in efforts to focus our attention on important social issues and seek out solutions to address inequalities, inequities, and destructive beliefs. Over the years, our community has also experienced the hateful actions of those driven by prejudice and racism. We must continue to stand up to these destructive attitudes that promote hate. We must also affirm our commitment to support all people of color. Our students and staff have worked very hard for many years to create a school district that respects all people and continually seeks to gain a better understanding of different cultures, religions, and lifestyles. This vitally important work must and will continue in our schools and in our community. And again, I put out a statement on this last week, so thank you. And I'll continue with my commentary then at the request of President Berry.
Please.
So I do want to, oh, go ahead, unless there's any comments. Okay. Under D, I just want to mention that we will have on the board agenda for renewal the MHSAA athletic membership. Again, that'll be another thing. We don't know the direction of what will happen with athletics in the fall. You know, we know some athletic programs allow for social distance, some may not. So we're going to be following state and governor regulations there. Under E, I am going to ask Eric to play a video. We did, we're going to be talking about graduation later in the agenda as a discussion item, but we also had to put together a video that highlights some of the material distribution that occurred at the high schools, along with recognizing our students. And I know our principals and our teachers and our staff have been, we feel for our graduates to 2020, and so we do want to recognize all of them. So I'll let Eric play that video now. Thank you. So again, congratulations to our graduates and more to come with that. I'll continue with my commentary. Moving down to F, board meeting at ASC. So I've talked to President Berry and I've talked to our attorney. And so for the next board meeting, we're planning to have it live at ASC. We have to follow certain regulations. We're also going to have a virtual option as well. because if we do allow open to the public, we have to follow all the regulations with temperature testing and other things that are required. Anybody who's there would have to legally wear the mask, and we could move it to the side when we comment, but we are going to plan for that option. We will have to limit if public wants to come in physically, and that's one of the reasons why we have to have the virtual option, because we'll have to limit the number. We'll have to social distance with the 6 feet, and even the Board of Education, those that are in there, and myself would have to social distance. So our team has been working on the plan, but that's tentatively what we're planning to do. So I wanted the public to be aware of that. And June is the only month where we do have 2 board meetings due to the budget. Every other month we have one meeting a month, but June we always do it because we have to pass the budget per state law. Oh,
Dr. Mead, do you have a question? You're muted, Dr. Mead.
Is it also an option for board members to attend virtually?
Yes, it is. Yeah, not mandatory to
Thank you.
physically there.
Dr. Maleko, I don't think there are any windows that open in the board meeting room, are there?
I do not believe so. There may be a couple at the top, but I'd have to check with operations.
Mm-hmm.
But there's very few, if any.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Please continue, Dr. Maleko.
Okay. Just quickly, my role with the State Superintendent Association, I've been working hard with that. It also gives us extra insight into what's going on across the state. And so I just want to assure, Dearborn schools and also the state, the county, and the state. I represent the state actually in my role there, and working hard for the students of Dearborn. It gives us an advantage, and I appreciate the support of the board when I was elected to that board last year. So I'll keep moving along. I want to mention this. This is 2 years now, I believe. It's just a little over 2 years. My colleague, my esteemed colleague, President Cavalluna, has been with the district. And I want to thank the Board of Education for hiring President Cavalluna. I want to thank him for the great partnership and for his leadership. It's been great working with him, and understand when I say that he and we speak on a regular basis. We text on a regular basis. We're in communication. When there's an issue, I can tell you right now, it's how can I help you? How can I help you? But it's not about us as individuals. It's about helping the students at the college and the students at the P12. As you know, we continue to expand with the Collegiate Academy, all the programs under Mr. Ferlella, and all of President Cavalluna's work. So I just felt I appreciate him and his team. And I got to tell you, it's been outstanding, the collaborative, when we get into a room, not just the two of us, but when our teams get together, then it's like, how do we solve these problems and these issues? And we're both dealing with these COVID situation. And it's been intensive for both of us. And so therefore, we're also able to support each other through those intensive days that are very, long at times, even when they are virtual. So I just want to shout out to President Cavalluna and thank him for the great partnership. And thank you to the board for our great partnership between Superintendent, President, and Board of Education. Appreciate your leadership and the recognition of the importance of how we work together with the P12 and the college. We're like no other place because of that relationship. So I want to thank the leadership of the board. And then the next thing I do.
Dr. Maleko, 1 second, Doctor.
Oh, sure.
Trustee Lane, you have a comment or a question?
Oh, I would just like to say, and I think that I can anticipate Dr. Mead and Trustee Petchlikov agreeing with me, maybe President Barry as well. I don't think I've ever seen such integration between the college and the district. And I'm really happy to see that. Through many years, we maintained both boards with the hope that there would be better seamless transition from our schools into our college. And I'm really, I don't think it's ever been this good. So I'm very happy for it. Thank you to President Cavalluna and to Dr. Maleko.
I agree with Mary.
As do I.
I totally agree with Trustee Lane's comments.
Yeah, it's very heartwarming to see the effort and support that these two gentlemen have given to each other and to the students and staff across the board. And we are the only P14 college in the state, in the nation at this point, I believe. And I think we're an example that should be mimicked, not dismissed. So I'm happy that we are all getting to work together in this fashion.
I think we're all happy about that because it makes our job a lot easier too, so I'm thankful.
I'm glad that they have each other to lean on because dealing with the 7 of us isn't always easy.
Oh, it's not that bad. You guys are pretty good.
Dr. Malika, do you want to continue?
Yes, thank you so much, President Berry. And thank you for those comments as well and that recognition. We are passionate about what we're doing. We'll continue. Okay, so the budget and public comments, I want to mention that today we had 2 separate forms for public comment. And the reason we did that is because we did the first one with our normal process, which we have to do virtually on the Google, which there'll be public comment. But the second one is for the budget, and it was posted on the same location. And the reason is because it's a budget hearing. I believe Mr. Wall even posted in the paper, and this happens every year at this meeting when he would come up during the discussion item. And then what will happen is after the discussion item on the budget, he would announce that anybody could make a public comment. So it kind of extends the public comment. So the first public comment closes by, I believe it's 7:10, 7:15. This one must stay open until after Mr. Wall finishes with his presentation with the discussion item at the end of the, so I just wanted to clarify that for everyone and for the public as to why we needed to do that. And again, we're very transparent, as you're aware. We've had, the finance committees taped online, and then we put all the public hearing notifications in the paper. The last thing I want to comment on under other is just that I know there's some comments as I'm seeing coming in that they're going to comment later about the music. I just want to comment that right now we've given preliminary staffing to all the buildings, but the way it works in middle school, and I was a middle school principal, is that they're projecting staffing and they got to go based on course requests from students. I can say there's no definitive decisions yet whatsoever, and we've made that clear to the principals, especially right now, that staffing is going to take a while. So it is possible that, principals are having conversations with staff to start planning for possibilities, but there's been no definitive decisions. And we, of course, really value the music program. I think you know that I've always valued it. I always go to the, sad that we couldn't have the event at the Performing Arts and the leadership of Lisa Meyer. So we definitely value the arts. Right now, everything is just tentative because of the COVID situation. Secondly, sometimes if, we have to have enough students that enroll in classes to run courses. I believe that the orchestra strings, from what I heard from Dr. Chokol, I think would be fine, I believe, but there's still to look at, again, the preliminary. We've told the principals, just like the budget, most likely, worst case, best case, we've said the same thing to them. I said it at the meeting last week. You need to plan for multiple possibilities. I also made it very clear that when the staffing was sent to the buildings, this is tentative, pending all the budget, which is going to go later this year because of the crisis and because of what's going on at the state level. So I just want to mention for the public out there that these are just preliminary conversations about staffing. And, you're going to hear these conversations occur. And you know how some, rumors happen and different things. I could tell you there's been no definitive final decisions until we look at all the data, we look at the budget numbers, and we see what the course requests are. So anything that may have happened or may have been discussed, is preliminary right now. And I'm doing the same thing with other reductions, which we're going to talk about in the budget later, as I'm having conversations with ADSA and union heads and others to start planning. Because at some point we have to have the conversations so that we are ready to move forward when a final decision is made. So I just wanted to make that comment in advance of some of the public commentary, and I'm finished. I appreciate it, President Berry.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maleko. Madam Secretary, next item, please.